Well, folks, it's been a a bruiser. This harness was extensive. I've never had one where I had to literally run every single wire in the entire harness. I was always reworking truck harnesses and you know, just having to maybe cut, lengthen certain wires or shorten other wires. So this was time consuming. So I'm glad I'm finally to this point. So we threw her on a little storage stand here. Now, let's see if I can do this with one hand here, maybe. Oh, I got one little screw I gotta hook up here, so bear with me here. Alright, that's low pressure pump. High pressure is controlled by the computer. Here's the starter. Oh. Gotta turn the key on. That's basically turning the ignition on. So here we go. Alright, where'd my screwdriver go? Oh! So yeah, she seems pretty happy, kinda, maybe a little confused. So yeah, you got full-time hot here. You got two full-time hots actually. I ended up adding another terminal and I guess I don't remember how I did that. I didn't want to stack too much on one terminal here because I needed to get power for these two relays. This one's your starter relay. This one is the low pressure fuel pump on that Volvo module. I ended up adding another relay so I could control the low pressure separately rather than having the computer do it. You know how the computer will turn the fuel pump on for just a short little bit when you turn the key on and then shut it back off. I kind of figured with the lift pump, you know, being as it's got to pull all the way from the tanks, it's got to fill up a fuel filter, and it has to fill that entire that little swirl pot, that chamber up full of fuel. That it seemed like it would work better if, you know, whether I control this with a switch on the dash that I turn on, or I could also just have it with keyed ignition, you know, so you turn the key on and that thing just stays on. I think both of which is illegal. I don't think the Coast Guard wants you doing that. I think the Coast Guard only wants the pump coming on when the engine is starting. So having a fuel pump that's controlled separately, I don't think is legal. The regulations are kind of vague, so I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with that yet, but I figured rather than having the PCM running both pumps, I would you know, do it separately. You know, have it function kind of like a electric fuel pump running a carburetor. You know, you just wire those to keyed power, or to a switch, and keyed power through both. So I don't know. Well, we'll see. I'll you know, I'll think about that more, and you know, once the motor's in the boat and we're doing the wiring harness, then I'll have to make up my mind. But I put just a little LED right here. I don't know if you saw that when it was running, but that's just tied to keyed power. So anytime there's keyed power, that light is on. Whether the key's just on or the engine's running, that'll be on. Kind of a quick reference type thing, you know. I'm a mechanic, so I'm always trying to make things easier to diagnose. You know, the engine isn't starting or something like that. You pop the hood on the boat and look back there with the key on, and you see that little red light. Well, you know that you got power back here. The PCM's powered up, and you know, everything else. So, but yeah, the harness is all done. As far as I know, like I said, I mean, it seems like the motor's happy. I can't tell for sure. I'd like to hook up a proper scan tool to it. I've only got this little Bluetooth gizmo right now, which it's not bad. You can get a lot of the sensor readouts, but it's just quirky, and I don't know. I can't seem to keep the Bluetooth connected. It wants to just disconnect all the time, and it's kind of annoying. So, but yeah, you see, I just kind of jerry-rigged a pressure gauge going down into the oil sender just to you know, make sure I had good oil pressure. And I don't know, if you saw it, it was right around 40, which is that's pretty damn good. I put pretty thin oil in it. I think I put 5W20 in it, you know, just to run through it for a while and just hear out what was going to run. It was just some cheap old oil. When I first tried to start this thing, it was very unhappy. And I think it came down to the math was no good. I cleaned it because it had been tossed around the shop enough times. I kind of figured it was dirty, and I remembered that, I guess, after the engine was running. So I put a new math on it, and now it's letting me rev it up. It wouldn't let me rev the engine up. It would only idle. So what else we got here? Like I said, well, I don't know if I did say, but I just robbed the PCM out of the Jeep because I don't have the other one's not tuned yet. But yeah, I'm very impressed with this this Volvo unit. So here's your low pressure, and here's your high pressure. This thing just filled this thing right up. I mean, and primed itself like a champ. This hose is the little basically the air bleed off on the top of that chamber. So this is going to go to the intake. We're just dumping this back into and there's nothing coming out of there. It's just gas fumes basically. So I got a couple of metric 14 and 16 millimeter O-ring type fittings, kind of like what's on a Saginaw steering gear or the back of a TBI throttle body, or the older fuel filters. That type of connection is what comes out of this pump. So just a couple of of adapters here to go over to 6AN. And this is, you can see on there, U.S. Coast Guard type A1-15 is what they look for. And I think they want 2 clamps at each connection. These are Oedeker clamps, I think they're called. And these are push lock fittings. I did a lot of talking to people, a lot of research on that, and that seems to be what people are doing with fuel injected applications. So we'll see how it works out. And then, like I said, up here, we hard plumbed the filter regulator right to the rail. So you got a rail adapter there, and then you got a double female swivel, 6AN, 6AN. And this is that fuel filter I was talking about that they put the 6AN fittings right on the filter, so it was really slick. It's probably going to need supported, maybe a little better. It's pretty rigidly in place, but I think it needs some kind of a support bracket. And obviously they want it to be grounded anyways. I think this is a static electricity thing with the fuel flowing through it. So it'll have to be grounded and, you know, I don't know, maybe tied to the front of that head, or I don't know. I'll have to figure something out with that. But yeah, it works great. The low pressure pump kind of primes the system, and then the computer controls the high pressure, and Corvette regulator regulates it, and it just sits right there happy at 60 psi. So I'm impressed. I like that thing. I'm hoping that it's going to be reliable. I don't know if I mentioned in one of the other videos, but like they had an issue with these things where the paint, they'd get overspray paint on the inside of the housings on these things, and the ethanol would ultimately eat the paint and just plug the whole system up, cause all kinds of problems. Excuse me. So we got it on there just for testing purposes, but I actually want to disassemble this thing and get the paint out of it, because just changing the fuel filter, I put a different fuel filter on it, and there's paint inside that part of it, so I'm assuming throughout that whole housing there's paint. So that's going to have to be addressed, or I'm going to end up kicking myself in the ass down the road when probably this filter up here plugs right full of shit. So we'll have to do that, but I just wanted to make sure that worked. I don't know. I didn't have a lot of faith in it for some reason. That maybe the unregulated pressure wasn't high enough to run one of these. Maybe the marine engines only ran at 40. Like I don't know. I couldn't find any information on it. So it's kind of cool that thing all worked out. So we got the other. I don't know if you can. Well, you can kind of see it. There's the other drain. We made that too when I buttoned down the oil pan. The motor was upside down, so it's just a hard line tube going up to where the drain is, back there in behind the starter where it's impossible to get to, and we just hard plumbed a tube down here. Put a little ball valve at the end of it, and I think you saw the one I had on the other side. That was just a simple thread right into the block. So we got two very quick, simple drains. There's no excuse not to drain the water out of it after every trip. Hell, you could do it. Pull the plug out of the back of the boat and pop both of the drains right there at the boat ramp when you pull it out of the water. So in an attempt to try to keep some of the sediment out of the block, if I do end up just running raw water through this thing, which I'm probably going to for a while because I'm a cheap ass, and I don't know, more importantly, I just want the thing to be absolutely as simple as possible. But so yeah, I had to make this other O2 sensor adapter. So we got both O2s now. Both manifolds are on there permanently. The engine sounds good-ish, kinda. I mean, if you start it up really cold, it's got a little bit of lifter clatter, like pretty much every one of these motors from this vintage. So whatever. I don't care. It's mostly going to get running warm weather, excuse me. And yeah, maybe it'll clatter a little bit the first time you start it. Have to put it in the water, and then once it warms up, it'll probably quiet down. Like I don't really care. I'm not going to tear this thing down right now. I can do that later, or I can get the boat up and running and find another $200 motor and tear that one down, you know, and go through it. Make sure you don't have piston slap or lifter issues with that engine, you know, button it all up, make it all right. And then, you know, when in the wintertime, you know, meanwhile you're enjoying the boat in the summertime. Well, in the wintertime, you swap the motor out and run this one for a while, because this thing's healthy. It's probably just, I know the timing chain's tight because I checked that when I had the pan off, and obviously the oil pressure is good, so the cam bearings are probably, they got to be good. We're running 5W20 and still pushing 40 pounds of oil pressure, so I'm sure the cam bearings are fine. So I'm sure it probably just needs lifters. It doesn't sound like piston slap to me. The Jeep out there, that thing, that definitely piston slaps when it's cold. It sounds like hell. So, and it doesn't smoke. You start it up cold, it doesn't even, not even a puff of smoke. So the valve seals are good, the rings are good. Yeah, I mean, for 200 bucks, I can't complain. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't be happier. I knew this was going to be a tedious part of the project, getting this part done. But because I spent so much time building the harness the way I built it, like it is, you know, encompassing everything on the engine, it's going to make my life so much easier when we go to rig this thing into the boat. It's going to be nothing. It's going to be like 7 wires back there, I think. 6 or 7 wires. And then, like I said, this is just a low pressure suction hose. So, you know, you can do 6 AN on this if you want to, but you really don't have to. You could use regular clamps, you know, like you're plumbing a carbureted motor. So this thing is going to be stupid simple to get running once it's in the boat, to get all the controls and the gauges hooked up. So that's exciting. Man, I think that about does it on this one. I can't think of anything else. Yeah, we'll keep chugging along on her, and we'll see how far we can get here. I'm gonna start working on the boat hull, I guess, getting it prepped to get this thing in there and get it test fitted. I got the PTO. I don't know if you saw that on the back of the crank. I have the U-joints, and I got all the yokes and everything to put the driveline together. So once the intake's mounted, we can drop the suction housing on there, and then we can align the engine and see where these motor plates are sitting, and get an idea what we want to use for stringers to get the engine mounted in there, at least roughly. So yeah, thank you for watching. This is exciting. That's a pretty good sounding $200 motor. We'll see you guys next time.